Digital platforms play a critical role in Australia's economy and society, yet our capacities to understand and observe their activities is very limited. Australians see hundreds of ads a day, but who's taking note of what they're seeing? Hi, my name is Abdul Obeid.
I'm Professor Christine Parker.
My name is Lauren Hayden.
I'm Professor Daniel Angus.
I'm Nicholas Carra.
And I'm a co-lead
on the Australian Ad Observatory project.
The point of studying advertising is that advertising is kind of the backbone of the automated digital economy. So much of what digital platforms have been able to do in terms of building automated models is because of all the advertising revenue they bring in and the way they're trying to solve problems for advertisers. So if we want to answer really important questions about our media environment, the flows of information we're immersed in, then it all kind of goes back to the advertising model and the kind of decisions that the advertising model makes about our feeds.
The Ad Observatory is a multi-institutional, interdisciplinary project to study online advertising, particularly on platforms such as Facebook and a lot of Google's advertising ecosystem. The Ad Observatory is an important project because it attempts to bring observability to a previously unobservable form of media.
The Australian Ad Observatory uses key principles of citizen science in our approach. And really what that means is that it's for the mutual benefit of both the researchers, but also the Australians who have donated their ads to our project.
Through the project, we were able to create the largest data set of Facebook ads in Australian history. And this is substantial because it helps researchers understand and hold to account social media platforms.
Existing archives for digital advertising were made by the platforms, so designed by Facebook, and they had some serious limitations to them that hindered our ability to actually look at the ads that were being shown to users online. We had no ability to understand how ads were targeted or who was actually seeing them.
I think sometimes there is a lack of understanding as to what is even happening within that platform environment. And that's where this observability approach, I feel, is so powerful, because a lot of the conversations we've had with policymakers, with politicians in this first phase has been to just show them evidence of the kinds of advertising that we even see there. So the first phase of the Ad Observatory project really was a first attempt to just understand the scope of advertising that is in the ecosystem, particularly on Facebook. And for us to do that, we divided the project into a number of case studies.
In 2022, we had a hackathon with the Ad Observatory, and we invited a whole lot of stakeholders and partners, as well as students and others who participated in the hackathon. And as part of the hackathon, some of our stakeholders or partners had particular policy issues that they were interested in. And that was actually how we identified some of the case studies to look at. So our partner, the Consumer Policy Research Centre, they were really keen for us to look at greenwashing in the Ad Observatory. And we found a lot.
My name's Chandani Gupta. I'm the Deputy CEO and Digital Policy Director at Consumer Policy Research Centre. Access to over 20,000 impressions of over 8,000 Facebook ads meant that we could really stress test the visual elements that consumers continuously see on social media that may help create a green halo effect and often leave them quite confused. We found a range of common terms that businesses were using over and over again. So the top ones being green, clean, sustainable. But in addition to those terms, to really create that green halo effect, what we found was colors, specific colors like ocean blues and floral greens, along with emojis such as the Mobius loop or the Earth symbol, to create that effect that something might be far more sustainable or environmentally friendly than it probably is.
Misleading and deceptive advertising by a business is unlawful. The problem is that when you're advertising on social media, there's no way for a regulator to see what's being advertised on people's personal feeds.
There is nothing stopping a business today to use terms and define them in a way that works for them.
The trends we've been able to track in the Ad Observatory have really helped us to understand some larger social issues. So with some of our partners, like the Foundation for Alcohol Research and Education, we've really been interested in the harm that alcohol causes in our societies.
We've been seeing that digital advertising is really becoming really hyper-targeted or tuned to an individual person based on these kind of real-time experimentations that these digital platforms are conducting on all of us when we're online. And when we consider this for alcohol, which is an addictive substance, that's often meaning that people who have really high alcohol use are the ones that are being targeted the most with alcohol advertising.
Alcohol marketers are some of the most innovative actors really in the digital media economy. They've been on digital media platforms for a long time trying to work out how to use them to reach Australians. And I think one of the really important aspects of alcohol marketing, like other fast-moving consumer goods categories, is you see this kind of convergence of the advertisement with the kind of retail moment. So once upon a time, you'd like see the ad and then you'd go to the shop and buy the product. But in our digital feeds now, the ads are like tappable shop fronts. And of course, like really since the pandemic, you see this kind of on-demand delivery part of it as well. And this raises real concerns if you think about the debate in Australia over this year and the last several years about domestic and family violence and its intersection with alcohol consumption. So it's really important to kind of understand these harms, to map and document them, and then to share those understandings with civil society, with government, with platforms, so that we can begin to work out what better and more accountable forms of these models might look like.
This particular finding has informed policies that we've been developing to inform current regulation reforms that have been discussed across many states in Australia for the online sale and promotion of alcohol. One of those is that these ads shouldn't be able to have buttons that directly connect you to alcohol sales, so help recreate the distance that once was there.
One of the things that we came across when we were collecting ads that people contributed through their Facebook feeds was quite a few scams. And what we noticed was well-known figures from the Australian media scene were being used to advertise these scams. And so we could very easily detect these ads by using some of the language. All the ads had slightly different look. They sometimes use different people, but they use the same texts. We'd also go back into the Facebook ad library and use those same snippets of text and surface ads that we may not have caught with our participants. What's interesting about the fact that we could find them in the ad library was that even though these ads violate Facebook's terms of service, Facebook doesn't seem to take them down until they get some type of a complaint. And there isn't really any accountability that they face for leaving them up, besides people complaining and saying you're violating your terms of service. One of the things that we did find when we were doing the work in Australia is the global character of these scam ads that we looked at. And it was really one of the researchers on the team, Chris O'Neill, who just asked the question, what if I take one of these phrases, is this the end of his career, was one of the tag phrases, and I'll translate it into German, I'll translate it into French. And he surfaced ads that were identical to the ads that we saw in Australia. And that means this is an international scale problem. We also saw that there were some patterns in terms of income. It tended to be some lower income folks who were disproportionately represented in receiving the ads. So we can start to see the patterns of how these ads are distributed, and we can start to see some of the magnitude of the problem, and we can use what we find out through the Ad Observatory also to investigate internationally what's happening.
The Ad Observatory has really enabled us to go out and have these ongoing conversations with really important decision makers across government, in federal government agencies and departments, with members of parliament and senators, with civil society organisations in Australia around public health, digital rights, consumer protections. And I think a really important role we play here is explaining how the forms of transparency and observability that platforms have provided don't really enable us to understand how the automated decision-making works. And that's really the heart of the model. That's what makes it powerful, and it's what potentially makes it harmful in the case of some commodities.
I think in the first, phase of the work, what we found is that we've really benefited from the close connection with the industry partners we've had. The questions they've brought to us as a group have been incredibly pivotal in the way in which we've built the infrastructures, the kinds of questions we've studied in the mountain of data that we've been able to amass thanks to our citizen scientists that have signed on.
One major output from our partnership with CPRC has been the Seeing Green report.
The report has given us a toolkit of recommendations that we've been sharing with both sides of government, regulators and policymakers, including sharing the research insights at the recent Senate inquiry into greenwashing.
We've also been able to use what we've been finding to inform our engagement in privacy reforms. So it's really important for us to be able to have collaborations on projects like this that help us work towards policies that minimise these harms.
The case study approach has allowed us to really dig deep into the mechanisms and mechanics behind how automated advertising works within a very, very large platform like Facebook, and has given us a lot of the missing empirical evidence that we can now, as an entire field, use to really inform our understanding of how these forms of new advertising really work.
So the first phase of the Ad Observatory is finished, and we've got all these marvellous outputs. And then in July, we've announced the second phase of the Ad Observatory.
In the second phase of the Ad Observatory project, we're kind of shifting our focus. In the first part, what we did was look at the ads that are flowing through our Facebook feeds. But in the second phase, we're kind of like turning our orientation around, and we're looking at the people who receive the ads. So we're focusing on particular groups of Australians and working with them to figure out what their experience of automated advertising is. And then the other really important shift we're making is we're going into their mobile feeds and getting them to donate the ads that are appearing on their smartphones.
As the next step in our data donation infrastructure, the Australian Mobile Ad Toolkit will be an app that you can download to partake in the data donation process directly from your mobile device.
Mobile advertising is different than desktop advertising. It's using a bigger range of variables to target ads to users. So it can use things like GPS and location data, take into account things like the weather, where you're currently located, what shops are around you, as well as other information like what apps you have on your phone and prompting you to shop through those apps.
One thing that I'm quite excited about is taking a look at the upcoming federal election, at how political ads are being targeted. We know that we're entering a world in which micro-targeting is characterizing the way that political messaging is shared, and that, different people might, from the same candidate, get a very different message according to what their interests are.
We do find that in, Australian society and internationally, we hear a lot of debates around the role of digital media within our society. The frustration sometimes is that these debates are not evidenced by real findings about what the real world experience for people are of these kinds of platforms.
The role that we play is not, in a sense, just finding the evidence one time, but in kind of engaging continuously in this conversation so that when Australians from different groups and sectors get together and to talk about the power of digital platforms, we're doing it from a much more kind of informed point of view.